Wow. So that's interesting. Turning off the sound for a bit. So that was 2 hours and 45 minutes. That was actually much longer than I expected it to be. So I'll give a quick recap. So basically they're introducing this new class, the Hunter class, which is obviously was already announced with two, the way I understand it, two Ascendencies. An Ascendancy called the Amazon, an Ascendancy which I didn't capture the name of, but it's focused more on chaos damage. So that's gonna be interesting. The interesting thing about the Hunter class is gonna be a mix between melee and ranged, which is obviously the spear. So you can actually use the spear as a melee weapon, but you can throw it at enemies as well. So that's pretty cool. The other three classes that are getting Ascendancies are the Warrior, which is going to be a blacksmith-focused Ascendancy. It looked pretty cool. The Mercenary, which is called a Tactician. And then the Witch, which I think was called the Lich, but I'm not 100% sure. It was something like the Lich. The interesting thing about the Witch is that the Bind Spectre is going to be released. So the Bind Spectre is one of the things that made me play Witch on release. So you can actually possess slain enemies, for which you will pay spirit. But that's going to be a very interesting mechanic, I think. So you can basically capture and possess rare enemies. So that's going to be really cool. The other thing they announced is mounts. I think they call it companions, but give me a sec while I close this down. So they announced mounts. I think they call it a companion. You should basically see it as a I think they see it as a minion, but it's basically a mount that makes you travel, I assume, faster. They also showed options to basically use that mount in combat, so you basically dodge roll out of it. I think you can even fight from it. You could see it using I think they were using either a ranger or a mercenary, so a ranged class. I'm curious how they're going to do that with melee classes, because if you put a warrior on it, you obviously have to be way closer to monsters to be able to fight. The other thing is they're introducing about 100 new support gems, about 100 new uniques. So that's going to be interesting. They're going to introduce unique charms, which I think is a good thing, because I think that was very limited. They addressed crafting. They're going to give the runes a full rehaul, so there's going to be different level of runes. I think there's going to be 4 type of runes that they showed on the screen that are either corrupted, and there's all kinds of different approaches to that, so I think that's good. The other thing they announced is a new orb. Let me see where I wrote it down. The Fractured Orb. So the way I understand the Fractured Orb is that you can basically lock in a specific modifier. The challenge there is that you still have to have the modifier on your on the item already. So it's not like you can use an orb to get a specific modifier, but you can lock in a specific modifier so that it doesn't go away when you either Chaos Orb it or that kind of stuff, or basically use the Orb of Annulment to take stuff off. So I think that's a good thing. So you can probably, it's always about the specific, very difficult to get modifiers. So I think that's a good thing. They also talked about a mechanic called the Wisp. I didn't fully understand exactly what it was. The Asmeri or something. I think that might be something that's related to the Dawn of the Hunt League. It showed like companions, so you can summon a sort of a spirit bear and a spirit owl or whatever it was, spirit birds. So I didn't fully understand that mechanic, but that's something they will introduce as well, and that probably becomes more clear over time. Or maybe it was clear and I just didn't pick it up. Then there is the Endgame. I think there's quite a lot of changes in Endgame as well, which is obviously good. So there's 7 new maps, the way I understand it. I'm not going to go into the different details of the maps, but there's going to be different map mechanics as well. So one of the things is that they basically have a map with sort of glowing stones on it that basically summon a boss, and you basically summon that boss 10 times for each time you defeat the boss for the loot to go basically get better, right? So that's going to be interesting. The other thing is they highlighted unique essences, which you can corrupt, which is interesting as well. You're gonna run into exiles. It's basically sort of classes that you can actually play. So it's the 6 classes that we know, and you will be fighting them. And if you defeat them, you basically get their loot, their equipment. So that's I find that an interesting one. They improved lockboxes, so you can get unique lockboxes now. I've not been extremely impressed with lockboxes in this version of early access, so maybe that's going to be a bit better now. What they also say is when you come from the campaign into Endgame, they are making that basically those quests that you progress through all the different tier maps, they're going to make that more interesting, which I think is a good thing, because I thought it was very boring. So I think that's a good thing. I already talked about the fractured orb. So that's going to be introduced. They're going to change the towers. I think this is a big win. So they said that there's going to be two-thirds less of towers. So there's a reduction of around 66% of towers, which I think is a very good thing. They increased the radius of the tower that are there significantly, and I think the way that I understood this is that the towers basically should be seen as a map. So you can get modifiers on, I call it modifiers. You can get modifiers on a tower. So you can run into a boss, you can run into a breach, I assume, all that stuff. The other thing is that tablets are going to be changed as well, and they're going to be way more potent, because obviously the radius of the tower increases, so the potency of the tablets must increase as well, right? You cannot have a huge radius and then still have maximum 10 map points that can be impacted by your tablet. So they're addressing that too. Waystones is going to be addressed. They're basically allowing you to respawn. I think I think it's related to the number of portals that you get, but there is sort of a respawn option there. I need to look into it. I didn't fully understand exactly how that's going to work, so that's going to be interesting. The other thing is with pinnacle bosses that you will not get experience from pinnacle bosses anymore, but if you die on a pinnacle boss, you will also not get the experience penalty. So I think that's probably a good thing, and that probably incentivizes people to still run pinnacle bosses, even though there's no real need for it, I guess. So I think that's good. The other thing that they showed is that I'm not sure if they're gonna use the reforging bench for that, but you can basically combine weapons or items. So they showed combining a bow with a crossbow. So that's gonna be interesting as well. So I think what they were trying to do with that is that if you're lucky, you can get one item out of it. If it's a crossbow or a bow, I think that's at random, but you're gonna get an item out of it, hopefully with the best modifiers on those items. So that's that. That's basically from the first half hour. Then we had a nearly 2-hour Q&A, which I think started really crappy because the audio was really, really bad. I think they improved it after a couple of minutes. They addressed the uniques. They went into that. They addressed crafting. They addressed inventory in a certain way. They talked about the drop of maps being addressed. So you're not gonna, when you're running tier 15 and tier 16 maps, you're not gonna drop tier 1 and tier 5 waystones anymore. So I think that's good, because that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think that's good. What they didn't address is the easier way, and I think this is especially an issue on console, an easier way to manage your inventory your stashes with a controller. So I don't think they addressed that. I think they spoke about console a bit, but I don't think they addressed that point. And this is interesting because I thought they would not address it, but they 2.5 hours into the stream, they finally started talking about performance. So they did address the performance, and this is where it becomes very, very interesting in my opinion. So I must admit, the guy, I think his name is Jonathan, he must be frustrated, but because he basically took a crack at NVIDIA. So the first couple of minutes he basically spent about the issue lying with the NVIDIA driver, and it being with a specific NVIDIA driver which is above a certain version. So basically what he's saying that the old NVIDIA driver didn't have the issue of crashes, but the newer NVIDIA drivers do have the issue. So there's two things to it. One, they're basically implementing a fix. I don't think they have the issue fixed, but they basically, what they said is they will pause the game and basically transfer your, let's say, your session into a new instance, and then basically let you unpause in that new instance. So we'll see how that works. The other thing they said is that you can potentially roll back to an older version of the driver of your NVIDIA card. I'm not going to do that. I don't see that happening, because I think besides maybe fixing the issue with your Path of Exile 2 game, I think I'm running into all kinds of other issues if I roll back to an older version. So I was not planning to do that, but I wanted to lay it on the table for you if that's potentially a fix for you. But I thought it was a bit. I'm just gonna say it. I thought it was a bit unprofessional to take a stab at NVIDIA for that. They did the same with Microsoft. Not extremely professional in my opinion. And then the last one, they basically took a stab at Intel because there's some kind of CPU issue with 13th generation processors, and I think it was related to the decompressor part he was talking about. I'm gonna look that part because I couldn't fully follow it, but yeah, I think that's the quick summary of this more than 2.5 hours live stream. They do say that they improve performance quite a bit. So hopefully, if you're not suffering, if you're not being impacted by the crashes that much, hopefully the performance improvement will be significant, and the frame rate drop will be reduced. So, all right, that's about it. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna take a break. This took way longer than I expected. I'll probably be online a bit later tonight for a bit of Path of Exile 2. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.